Fix your BGS with this one easy trick. No, it's not one easy trick. It is a multitude of tricks to know what the BGS. It's much more involved than that. But let me first explain who I am and what qualifies me to talk to you about BGS. For the last 3 years, I have run the largest Australian New Zealand based group in the game known as EDA Conti League. Now, the history of why I came to lead this group is, I would say it's sorted. It's for another time, but I will just flatly outline it was some of the worst aspects of BGS warfare that led to a leadership vacuum that I filled, and I've been doing it for the past 3 years. I haven't left the bubble in 3 years, so yeah, I was thrust into a crash course into BGS, advised by some very knowledgeable people, and I thankfully have now gotten a fairly decent grasp of it. There's still always stuff to learn. The BGS changes all the time, but not only do I now work for my faction, EDA Conti League, but I also consult for a number of other factions in the game, and I'm somewhat considered a galactic ambassador to the rest of the galaxy. Now, for some real-life qualifications, I work for a political party here in Australia. I won't mention what it is to save some drama, but I've worked for the past 5 years for this political party, and being inside the corridors of power, talking to members of parliament, dealing with the real-life machinations of real-world politics, it does give me a slight advantage in dealing not only with galactic politics, but also dealing with people as well. But let's get into the thick of it. The one question I get all the time is, what is BGS? What is it? How does it influence my game? Well, BGS, or like we call background simulation, is basically it's a mathematical algorithmic representation of what is essentially space politics. It simulates the vagrancies in real-life politics: war, famine, biological outbreaks, COVID, drought, economic booms, elections, terrorism, piracy, expansions, you name it. That there is a way that BGS affects not only your game, but you affect the BGS as well. Yes, just by playing the game, even without you knowing about BGS, you are affecting it. Every combat bond, mission, handing you cartographic data, profitable trade, everything you do in the game, and I mean absolutely everything, including power play, affects the background simulation, and we as BGS commanders can manipulate it to our advantage. Now, have you ever wondered why particular stations in lockdown? You can't access this. You can't access your ships. You can't access the mission board. The market's been locked out. Well, that is basically the station, or sorry, the faction in the system that owns the station being in such a bad security state that it says, nope, that's it. No more trade, no more missions, no more nothing until we get the security state fixed up. That is the BGS at work. BGS is everywhere, and there is always an explanation for why it is happening. Now, this series of videos is going to give you an initial outline on what BGS is, the overriding states, the three states. You've got special, economic, security, and happiness. Then we'll knuckle down to the nitty-gritty of working them to your advantage or to someone else's disadvantage. I'll give you tips and pointers on ships, loadouts, and the third-party sites that I use to help you along the way. I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm still learning. We all are still learning. There is always something happening to the background simulation on the FDev side and in the game side as well. Something could break. You just have to deal with it. So we'll start on the first tranche of it, and that is influence. Now, every system in the game, I'll refine that. Every populated system in the game with a station that you can land at has an influence. This is a 100% scale, from 0 to 100%, and that is distributed between all the factions in that particular system. There could be 2, there could be 8, could be 9, could be 5. But regardless of how many systems there are, influence is divvied up between all the factions in the system, and influence is one of the most, is basically the overriding factor in faction states. We will get into some of the special ones, but yeah, we'll work on that. So, working the influence, we could also work the background simulation. when you match with another faction in a game, in a system, more to speak, you actually go into what's then called a conflict state. A conflict state is your basic war or election. When your faction hits 75% or close to, you go into an expansion state, where your faction then searches for another system to move into. We'll go into the very specifics of that in another video. If your faction stays under 2.5% for a certain number of days, well, you're going to go into what is called a retreat state, where your faction is then booted out of that system until there is no faction of yours left in the particular system. So influence, as I said, dictates nearly everything the BGS does. Now, there are some special ways of working around specific states like terrorism or outbreak and stuff like that. And I said we'll go into those in specific videos. It's technically more BGS warfare type stuff, and some of it is just random situations thrown up by the BGS itself. But the three things you got to worry about: expansion, conflict states, and retreat states. That's the three things you really need to be concerned about, and managing where your influence lies in a particular in your systems. I have about 24 systems I manage just for EDA Country League. There's quite a few dozen more for the other factions that I consult for. I always say to people the safest range for your influence to be in as a controlling faction in a system that you are not native in is between 40 to 60%. If you're within those two ranges, you are the majority owner of influence in the system, and obviously you control the system. You've got to maintain it between 40 and 60% if you are not planning to expand out of anywhere. Obviously, influence takes a much greater role when it comes to just maintenance on your faction, especially if you're trying to expand or just maintain your territory. Influence is, as I said, the overriding factor. You've really got to take care of influence. Now, while we've gone through the sort of initial workings of influence, we are going to delve into a little bit of command and control. Now, one thing I do every single day of the week, whether I can be there or not, I have some very good 2ICs on my in my faction, is every day when the daily tick starts, and yes, we're going to go into daily and weekly ticks in another video as well. When the daily tick starts, or is technically finished, we actually fly around all of our systems and the systems that I consult for. We get the latest data for the day's activity. Now, to put it in a very condensed state, a daily tick is just basically the culmination of a 24-hour period of work, where your work for that particular faction in the system will be calculated against the other work for factions in the system, and then that will calculate the influence and technically the other states that a faction may go into or may go out of. So the daily tick is something that's very important. And as I said, command and control is basically having the most up-to-date information that you can, working on the intelligence that you receive or that you can find, and basically acting on that command and intelligence structure. Having a well-defined, having a well-defined series of procedures to maintain your faction is almost as critical as just basically doing the work itself. As I said, it is almost as critical as doing the work itself. You have the most up-to-date data you can, including markets, including knowing the prices of, let's say, low-temperature diamonds. You can then work the BGS to your advantage or disadvantage wherever you see fit. So let's just quickly just go over what I've come through in this video. As I said, these are going to be short videos trying to explain everything in nitty-gritty, but this is just your first tranche into what BGS is. And as I said before, that is the one question I get all the time. What is BGS? And as I said, BGS is basically a mathematical algorithm of space politics dictated by the influence of the factions in the system that you're working in for or against, regardless, and basically controls the game itself. It is as simple as that, but in another sense, it is not that simple. Now, please do. For the next few videos, please do. We are going to go through them. I am still working on it at the moment, still working on my scripting. So please do hang around. Catch me on a stream, twitch.tv/Commander Zorba Dundee. And we'll see you next time. 07 everyone. I see you. Bye.